In this section, we're going to talk about our grip for punting. There's a lot of different ways to grip the football. We're going to go over the way that I prefer. We'll go over why I prefer it. But I want to reiterate before we even start that there's a lot of different ways to grip the football. Really, it's all about finding the way that you can be most consistent with. You need to make sure that that punt is the same every time, so you know where it is, so you can go kick that football perfect every time. So the way I like to do it is I like to put, I call it the back of the ball grip, right? I like to put my hand on the back of the football, so I have 2 fingers in this quadrant, 2 fingers in this quadrant, my thumb on this one, and this one is open. So you can see that my fingers are pretty spread out for a lot of good coverage, right? And then I got my thumb on this one, and this one's open. The most important part to this drop is you want to stick the seam of this football right into the crevice of the thumb and the index finger. So when you're coming in, boom, you can see how the seam of the football is right in the crevice of that index finger and that thumb. That's going to make sure that you can lock your wrist out and the ball's pointed at 11 o'clock, right? So no matter what, we'll get into more why that's important when it comes to contact, but you need to have an 11 o'clock tilt to expose the fat part of the football, get the noses out of the way. It's going to get that ball to rotate over. Again, we'll get into more of that when we get into contact, but just know for right now, there's a little tendon on your thumb that you want to try to stick that tendon right into the crevice of that, or the seam of that football, so that you can lock your wrist out and it's already 11 o'clock. What you don't want to have is you don't want to maybe stick the point of the football into the back of the palm and then try to manipulate it with bending the wrist, because it's always going to be different every time. Sometimes that point will be at 10 o'clock, sometimes 11 o'clock, sometimes 9 o'clock. You're going to have very little control by trying to flick it to the area or the angle that you're trying to get it. So what you want to do is lock that in there, right? You can throw that football in there as hard as you want, and you know that once it hits that crevice, you're in good shape. But most importantly, you can lock that wrist out and it's pointed at 11 o'clock. Now, the other thing that is acceptable to me is they call the handshake grip, and that's basically the same grip. You're just kind of turning it over, right? So you're almost like shaking someone's hand. Again, I got my wrist locked out. I got my football pointed at 11 o'clock, so it's pretty much the same grip. The only reason I like it underneath compared to handshake is because when it went away from me, when it went wrong, it only went wrong out front, right? And I could still kick it in the direction that I wanted to kick it. Sometimes it'd be ugly, if it accidentally slipped out and the nose dropped, it's going to be an ugly kick. I get that, but at least it's a coverable kick. It goes down to the target that I'm trying to aim at. When I used to do the handshake grip a little bit and it used to get away from me, sometimes it would dip a little bit left, and then I would have no choice but to hit it dead left, and maybe not in my coverage area, maybe straight out of bounds, right? But it makes it tougher for my team to cover the ball. So that's the only reason I like the underhand back of the ball grip compared to the handshake, is because when it went away from me when I was punting, it would only go wrong in a straight line, right? I would still be able to kick it in the line that I wanted to do, compared to the handshake where sometimes it would fall off his line and then I would have to kick it out of bounds. But again, when it comes to grips, there's a lot of different grips. Just make sure whatever you're doing, you can do it consistently, and those are the 2 grips that I teach and I recommend, and those are the reasons that I do that.